The shuttle doors hissed open, and Dr. Ann Rodriguez stepped into a world that defied everything she thought she knew about physics. Colors that had no names on Earth painted the walls in shifting patterns. Beings made of pure light drifted past creatures that looked like walking crystals. The air itself seemed to hum with energy that made her teeth ache. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Captain David Blake said beside her, his voice tight with barely controlled amazement. "Home to the grand assembly of cosmic knowledge." Anne clutched her briefcase tighter. Inside were humanity's proudest achievements in physics and engineering. Suddenly, they felt like cave paintings brought to an art museum. Around them, impossible things happened with casual ease. A jellyfish-like creature the size of a small car floated past without any visible means of support, its translucent body pulsing with electric blue patterns. Where it passed, metal objects lifted into the air and began dancing in perfect geometric formations. "The Ethereal Coalition," Blake whispered. "They manipulate electromagnetic fields like we breathe." Anne watched in wonder as the creature, no, being, gestured with one of its flowing tentacles. Every electronic device within 50 meters responded instantly, their displays showing complex mathematical formulas that solved themselves in real time. The being seemed to notice their staring and turned what might have been a face toward them. Anne felt a brief uncomfortable sensation as if something was examining her mind. Then the creature dismissed them with what could only be described as cosmic indifference. They followed the flow of delegates deeper into the station. The architecture itself was alive with intelligence. Walls shifted to accommodate different atmospheric needs. Gravity fields adjusted automatically for each species. Anne stumbled as the gravity under her feet suddenly lessened by half, then returned to normal as she moved into a different zone. "Careful," Blake steadied her. "The station reads our biosignatures and tries to make us comfortable. Problem is, it keeps confusing us with the other species." A group of tall, angular beings glided past them, their crystal-like bodies refracting the strange light into rainbow patterns. One of them paused, regarding the humans with multifaceted eyes that seemed to hold galaxies. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a cosmic storm. "Humans," it said, the word carrying undertones of mild curiosity and vast disappointment. "The heavy worlders have arrived." The crystal mind moved on before Anne could respond, but she caught the whispered conversation that followed in its wake. Words like primitive and gravity-bound and evolutionary dead end floated back to her in the universal translation. Blake's jaw tightened. "They've been saying that since we made first contact." They entered the main assembly hall and Anne's breath caught. The space was impossibly vast, its ceiling lost in swirling mists that occasionally parted to reveal glimpses of stars. 12 distinct sections accommodated the different species, each one a marvel of adaptive engineering. The Ethereal Coalition's area crackled with contained lightning. The crystal mines sat in perfect geometric formations that hurt to look at directly. The Void Walkers occupied a section that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. And there, in the smallest section, sat the human delegation. 5 people in simple black uniforms looking lost and out of place among beings that seemed to casually violate the laws of physics. "Dr. Rodriguez," a familiar voice called out. Ambassador Lisa Park waved them over, relief clear on her face. "Thank goodness you're here. They're about to start the presentations and we need our best physicists to represent Earth." Anne looked around at the other delegates. A gaseous being was demonstrating how it could phase through solid matter while maintaining perfect molecular cohesion. Another species was manipulating time dilation fields as easily as she might adjust a thermostat. What could she possibly show them that would matter? "They think we're jokes," Captain Blake said quietly, following her gaze. "Most of them evolved in low gravity or no gravity at all. To them, we're like fish trying to fly." High Chancellor Vixen of the Ethereal Coalition rose from its resting place, its form shimmering with controlled energy. When it spoke, its voice filled the hall without need for amplification, reaching directly into each being's mind through electromagnetic manipulation. "Welcome, beings of knowledge, to the 307th Grand Assembly," Vixen announced. "Here we gather to share the highest achievements of cosmic civilization. Each species will demonstrate their mastery over the fundamental forces of reality." A ripple of anticipation passed through the assembly. Anne watched as the various delegations prepared their presentations, each one more impossible than the last. The crystal minds began calculating something that made nearby space visibly bend. The Void Walker started phase shifting in patterns that created brief glimpses into other dimensions. And now, Vixen continued, its attention falling on the human section like a spotlight. We welcome our newest members to the assembly. The humans who crawl through the universe like stones falling through water, bound forever to the heavy worlds that shaped them. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not cruel, but the kind of gentle mockery reserved for a child's first attempts at art. Anne felt heat rise in her cheeks. Around her, the other human delegates shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps, another voice chimed in, this one belonging to Elder Quintar of the Crystal Mines. They can demonstrate their unique relationship with gravitational forces. Show us how heavy worlders move through space. More laughter, accompanied by what sounded like cosmic chuckling from beings that didn't even have mouths. Anne looked at her briefcase again, then at Captain Blake. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there that surprised her. Not embarrassment, but determination. They think being adapted to gravity makes us primitive, Blake said softly. Maybe it's time we showed them what heavy worlders can really do. Anne straightened her shoulders and felt the familiar pull of Earth's gravity in her bones. Even here in the artificial environment of the station. For the first time since arriving, she smiled. They wanted to see what humans could do. She'd give them a demonstration they'd never forget. The grand assembly of cosmic knowledge was about to learn that there was more than one way to dance with the universe. 3 hours into the demonstrations, Anne was beginning to understand why the galaxy considered humans primitive. She watched a being made entirely of controlled plasma reshape reality itself, creating a miniature solar system that orbited around its glowing form. The crowd of alien dignitaries murmured appreciation in frequencies that made her fillings ache. Magnificent as always, Solar Dancer Reth, High Chancellor Vixen announced. The mastery of stellar mechanics through pure energy manipulation continues to astound us. The plasma being pulsed with pride before dissolving its creation and flowing back to its designated area. Anne noticed how it moved, like liquid fire unbound by any physical laws she could identify. Everything here was elegant, graceful, seemingly effortless. Captain Blake leaned close to her ear. Our turn's coming up. You ready for this? Anne looked at her notes again. Compared to beings who could manipulate space-time like modeling clay, her presentation on human engineering felt pathetically mundane. She had diagrams of load-bearing structures, stress calculations for spacecraft hulls, and efficiency ratings for gravity-assisted orbital mechanics. Basic physics that any first-year engineering student could understand. The crystal mines will now demonstrate quantum processing integration, Vixen announced. Elder Quintar rose, its faceted body catching and refracting light into impossible patterns. Without any visible technology, it began processing calculations that would have required Earth's largest supercomputers. Mathematical formulas appeared in the air around it, solving themselves faster than Anne could even read them. The Elder was calculating orbital mechanics for an entire star system in real time, predicting the positions of millions of celestial bodies across centuries. The audience erupted in appreciation. Even Anne had to admit it was incredible, the kind of processing power that humanity could only dream of achieving. Beautiful work as always, Vixen said. Now let us welcome our human guests to demonstrate their gravitational expertise. The way it said the words made them sound like a joke. Anne felt every eye in the assembly turn toward the human section, and suddenly the vast hall felt oppressively small. She stood, her legs feeling unsteady under what she realized was the station's attempt to adjust gravity for her comfort. It kept fluctuating slightly, as if the station's AI couldn't quite figure out what humans needed. Thank you, High Chancellor, Anne said, her voice carrying to the far corners of the hall through the universal translators. Humans have indeed developed a unique relationship with gravitational forces. Unlike most species here, we evolved under the constant pull of a heavy world. Every step we take, every structure we build, every vehicle we design must account for the relentless downward pull of 9.8 meters per second squared. She activated her holographic projector, showing images of Earth's greatest engineering achievements, skyscrapers that clawed their way up against gravity's pull, bridges that spanned vast distances while supporting crushing loads, spacecraft designed to break free from their homeworld's possessive grip. While other species have learned to dance around physical forces, Anne continued, humans learn to work with them. We build strong because we have to. We calculate precisely because imprecision means collapse. We understand structural integrity because gravity never stops testing it. A ripple of polite attention passed through the audience, but Anne could sense their continued dismissal. To beings who could manipulate gravity at will, human engineering must seem as crude as stone tools. Elder Quintar rose again, its crystalline form shimmering with what might have been amusement. Fascinating, Dr. Rodriguez, but perhaps a demonstration would be more illuminating than theory? What did you have in mind? Anne asked, though something in the elder's tone made her immediately suspicious. The station maintains a zero-gravity training facility, Quintar explained. We use it to help newly evolved species adapt to space environments. Since humans pride themselves on their relationship with gravity, perhaps Captain Blake would care to demonstrate human movement skills in a gravity-free environment. Anne felt her heart sink. The challenge was clever and cruel. Most species here were naturally adapted to zero gravity, or could manipulate their environment to make it irrelevant. Asking a human to perform in zero-G was like asking a fish to demonstrate its running skills. But before she could object, Blake was already standing. I accept the challenge. The alien delegates began moving toward the facility, their excitement palpable. This was entertainment to them, watching the gravity-bound humans flail helplessly in their natural element. The training facility was a sphere roughly 100 meters in diameter, its walls lined with obstacles, handholds, and floating platforms. Through the transparent aluminum viewing ports, Anne watched as several aliens demonstrated the course's proper technique. They flowed through the space like living water, their movements graceful and efficient. The ethereal coalition's representative moved by manipulating magnetic fields. The Voidwalkers simply phased through obstacles. Even species with physical forms seemed to glide effortlessly from point to point. The course tests agility, spatial awareness, and efficient movement through three-dimensional space, Quintar explained, as Blake suited up in a basic maneuvering kit. Most civilized species complete it in under 2 minutes. We're curious to see how heavy worlders adapt when freed from their planetary bonds. Blake sealed his helmet and entered the airlock. Through the viewing port, Anne watched him take his first tentative movements in zero gravity. Unlike the flowing motions of the other species, his movements were careful and deliberate. He pushed off from surfaces with controlled force, using handholds to guide his trajectory rather than fighting against inertia. The alien audience watched with barely concealed amusement as Blake made his way through the first section of the course. He wasn't graceful, there was no denying that. But there was something else in his movement, something Anne was beginning to recognize. He wasn't fighting the environment, he was using it. Where other species flowed around obstacles, Blake used them as leverage points. Where they relied on their natural abilities to manipulate their environment, Blake worked with the physics of momentum and inertia. His movements were economical, wasting no energy on unnecessary flourishes. Adequate, Quintar admitted as Blake completed the basic course, though hardly impressive compared to civilized movement techniques. Perhaps we should increase the difficulty, suggested another voice. Anne turned to see a representative of the Voidwalkers speaking, its gaseous form rippling with what might have been malicious amusement. The station's training facility includes variable gravity sections. Surely humans would excel when their beloved gravitational force is restored. Anne felt a chill of understanding. They weren't just testing Blake's zero-gravity skills. They were setting him up for a more comprehensive humiliation by showing how poorly humans performed as gravity increased, gravity that would crush or cripple the other species but which humans were supposedly adapted to handle. An excellent suggestion, Vixen agreed. Let us see how the heavy worlders truly measure against galactic standards when the universe's most basic force comes into play. Blake's voice crackled through the comm system from inside the facility. Bring it on. Anne pressed her hand against the viewing port, watching as additional sections of the course activated. This wasn't going to be just a test of human movement in zero gravity. This was going to be a demonstration of what separated humanity from the rest of the galaxy, for better or worse. The real trial was about to begin. The facility hummed as its gravity generators came online. Anne pressed closer to the viewing port, her breath fogging the transparent surface as she watched Blake position himself at the start of the variable gravity course. Around her, alien delegates adjusted their viewing angles, some floating freely while others positioned themselves in ways that human eyes couldn't quite follow. Beginning gravity progression, the station's AI announced in its perfectly neutral tone, starting at 0G, increasing by 0.2G intervals every 30 seconds. Maximum capability, 5G. Anne felt her stomach drop. 5 times Earth's gravity would crush most of the species present. It would probably kill Blake if he couldn't get out in time. But looking at the alien faces around her, she realized that was exactly the point. They expected him to fail long before reaching dangerous levels, proving once and for all that humans were nothing special. The first section remained at 0 gravity, and Blake moved through it with the same careful efficiency he'd shown before. The alien observers made soft sounds of polite interest, the kind reserved for mildly entertaining curiosities. Then the gravity field activated. In the second section, at 0.2G, about 1/5 of Earth normal. The other species demonstration, recordings showed them moving with only slightly reduced grace. Their energy-based propulsion systems compensated easily for the minimal gravitational pull. Blake entered the section, and immediately Anne noticed the difference in his posture. His movements became more confident, more natural. Interesting, Elder Quintar observed. The human appears more comfortable with gravitational force present. At 0.4G, the recording of a void walker showed the gaseous being beginning to struggle slightly, its form becoming more condensed as it fought to maintain cohesion against the pull. Blake, meanwhile, was moving with increasing fluidity. He used the gravity wells around obstacles to slingshot himself forward, his trajectory calculations instinctive and precise. The alien murmurs grew more attentive. This wasn't what they'd expected to see. At 0.6G, the Ethereal Coalition's demonstration recording showed clear signs of strain. The being's electromagnetic fields had to work harder to maintain its elevation, and its graceful movements became more labored. Blake was now moving through the course faster than any of the previous demonstrations, using gravity itself as an ally, rather than an obstacle to overcome. How is he doing that? Asked a crystalline being Anne didn't recognize. Its multifaceted voice carried genuine curiosity rather than condescension. At 0.8G, something shifted in the observation deck's atmosphere. The casual entertainment was being replaced by focused attention. The previous demonstration recordings showed most species beginning to show serious difficulty. Their elegant movements became clumsy as they struggled against gravitational forces their evolutionary history hadn't prepared them for. Blake was thriving. His movements had found a rhythm, a flow that worked with the gravitational field rather than against it. He swung from handholds with perfect timing, used wall impacts to redirect his momentum, and navigated 3-dimensional puzzles by letting gravity help guide his path. At 1G, Earth normal, the alien demonstration recording showed beings struggling to remain airborne. Energy fields flickered under the strain. Gaseous forms began to collapse. Physical species moved with obvious difficulty, their bodies not designed for such relentless downward force. Blake moved like he was home. Anne realized she was holding her breath as she watched him flow through the course section with an efficiency that bordered on artistry. Every movement was economical, every gesture purposeful. He wasn't wasting energy fighting gravity. He was channeling it, using it, making it part of his technique. Impossible, whispered Solar Dancer Reth, its plasma form flickering with agitation. How can the heavy worlder move with such ease under crushing gravitational force? At 1.2G, the alien recordings showed complete failure. Beings that had moved like living poetry in 0G were now grounded, struggling or completely unable to function. Some had activated emergency beacons to exit the course before being injured. Blake was accelerating. His movements had become so fluid and natural that Anne almost forgot she was watching someone navigate a complex obstacle course under crushing gravity. He looked like he was dancing. At 1.4G, no alien species had ever completed this section. The gravitational force was simply too much for beings evolved in gentle environments. Blake sailed through it like it was a playground. The observation deck had gone completely silent. Every being present was staring through the viewing ports with expressions ranging from amazement to something approaching fear. The casual dismissal had evaporated, replaced by a tension Anne could feel in the recycled air. At 1.6G, Blake was still moving with confidence, though Anne could see the increased strain in his posture. His movements remained controlled and efficient, but they carried more weight now, more deliberate force. At 1.8 G, even Blake was beginning to show the effects. His breathing was heavier, visible through his suit's biomonitors. But he continued through the course with steady determination, his earth-trained muscles and dense bone structure handling forces that would have liquefied most of the observers. "This is unprecedented," Elder Quintar said, its crystalline voice carrying undertones of genuine awe. "No species in galactic records has demonstrated functional capability above 1.2 G. At 2 G, Blake's movements had changed character again. Gone was the fluid grace of lower gravity levels. Now his technique was pure efficiency. Every motion calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum energy expenditure. He moved like a machine designed specifically for high-gravity environments. Because that's exactly what he was, Anne realized. Every human was essentially a biological machine engineered by millions of years of evolution to operate under Earth's relentless gravitational pull. They weren't primitive, they were specialized. At 2.2 G, Blake completed another section, though his movements had slowed considerably. The biomonitors showed elevated heart rate and respiratory stress, but still within acceptable parameters. Around Anne, alien beings were making sounds of distress just watching him operate under forces that would crush them instantly. At 2.4 G, Blake paused at the entrance to the next section, taking several deep breaths. The gravity field was now more than twice what most of the alien species could survive, and he was still conscious, still moving, still thinking clearly enough to navigate complex obstacles. "Shut it down," Solar Dancer Reth said urgently. "He'll be killed if the gravity increases further." But Blake's voice crackled through the comm system, steady despite the strain. "I can handle more. Let's see what this course can really do." Anne looked around the observation deck and saw something she'd never expected to see. The most advanced beings in the galaxy were looking at a human with respect, admiration, and just a touch of fear. The heavy worlder who crawled through space like a falling stone was demonstrating capabilities none of them could match. At 2.6 G, Blake entered what the course designers had labeled the theoretical maximum section. Theoretical because no known species had ever survived to attempt it. As he disappeared into that section, Anne heard Elder Quintar speak in a voice filled with something approaching reverence. "Perhaps we have misjudged the heavy worlders." Outside the viewing ports, space continued its eternal dance. But inside Harmony Station, the galaxy's understanding of human potential was being rewritten with every step Blake took under crushing gravitational force that would mean instant death for any other known form of life. The alarm started as a low hum that made Anne's bones vibrate. Within seconds, it escalated to a piercing wail that sent every being in the observation deck into various states of panic. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as the station's AI voice cut through the chaos with mechanical calm. Proximity alert. Massive object detected on collision trajectory. Impact estimated in 47 minutes. The viewing ports automatically shifted to show external feeds. Anne's blood went cold as she saw it. An asteroid easily 3 times the size of the station, tumbling through space on a direct intercept course. Its surface was wrong somehow, seeming to bend light around it in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Impossible." Elder Quintar's crystalline voice cracked with stress. "Our early warning systems cover a full light-year radius. Nothing that size should be able to approach undetected." High Chancellor Vixen's electromagnetic form flickered with agitation as it interfaced directly with the station's sensors. "The object appears to be composed of exotic matter. Its gravitational signature is nothing unusual. Our detection systems cannot properly analyze it." Through the comm system, Blake's voice came from the training facility where he was still trapped in 2.6 G. "What's happening out there?" "We're working on it," Anne called back, but even as she spoke, she could see the alien delegates falling into chaos. Beings that had seemed godlike in their technological mastery were now flailing helplessly as their sophisticated systems failed to provide solutions. Solar Dancer. Reth attempted to project energy fields toward the approaching asteroid, but its plasma constructs dissipated harmlessly against the exotic matter composition. The Void Walkers tried to phase the entire station into another dimension, but the asteroid's gravitational distortions anchored everything firmly in normal space. "Crystal mines? Can you calculate a deflection trajectory?" Vixen asked desperately. Elder Quintar's multifaceted form was already processing, complex equations appearing and dissolving around its crystalline body at lightning speed. But after several seconds, it stopped abruptly. The gravitational distortions are too chaotic. The exotic matter creates unpredictable field fluctuations. My calculations cannot account for the variables. Anne felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations, beings who could manipulate space-time like putty, were being defeated by a simple rock hurtling through space. Their elegant solutions required predictable conditions, controlled environments, and comprehensible physics. This was a brute force problem, and they had evolved past the ability to solve it. She pulled out her tablet and began running calculations the old-fashioned way. Mass velocity, trajectory, impact points, basic Newtonian mechanics that any human engineering student would recognize. While the aliens around her attempted increasingly desperate technological solutions, Han worked with simple math that had been guiding human spaceflight for centuries. Dr. Rodriguez, Vixen's voice carried a note of hope as it noticed her working. Can your your alternative calculation methods determine a solution? Anne ignored the slip and continued working. The asteroid's composition was exotic, but its movement followed classical physics. Its gravity well was chaotic, but it still obeyed inverse square law relationships. Most importantly, it was a physical object moving through physical space. Exactly the kind of problem humans had been solving since they first started throwing rocks. Maybe, she said, fingers flying over her tablet, but not with energy manipulation or dimensional phasing. This thing is anchored too firmly in normal space-time. We'd need direct physical intervention. Physical intervention? Elder Quintar's form shimmered with confusion. You mean, touching it? Anne looked up from her calculations to see expressions of horror on alien faces capable of showing such emotions. The idea of making physical contact with a dangerous object was apparently unthinkable to species that had spent millions of years solving problems at a distance. Direct contact using conventional thrusters applied at specific vector points, Anne confirmed. Basically, we need to ram it with enough force to change its trajectory. It's crude, but it should work. That's insane, breathed Solar Dancer Reth. The gravitational stresses would destroy any vehicle attempting approach. Anne smiled grimly. Not any vehicle. One designed by heavy worlders. She opened a comm channel to the station's engineering section. I need to speak to whoever's in charge of the maintenance pods. A gruff voice answered immediately. Chief Engineer Murphy here. You picked a hell of a time to call, Doc. Murphy, I need to know the structural specifications on your heaviest maintenance pod. Maximum thrust, structural integrity ratings, acceleration tolerance. You planning to go somewhere? Because nowhere's a real good option right about now. Answer the question, Chief. Murphy rattled off the specifications and Anne felt her heart sink. The pods were built for station maintenance, not high-acceleration interception missions. They could probably survive the approach, but the pilot would be subjected to crushing G-forces that would kill any known species. Except one. Blake, she called through the training facility comm. I need you out of there now. Kind of busy being crushed by artificial gravity, Blake's voice came back, strained but steady. Give me 2 minutes. Anne didn't have 2 minutes. The asteroid was growing visibly larger in the external feeds. Its exotic matter creating reality distortions that made nearby space seem to ripple like water. But she also knew that Blake was the only being on the station who could survive what she was about to propose. Around her, the alien delegates were descending into panic. Their energy-based solutions had failed. Their dimensional manipulation techniques couldn't affect the asteroid. Their quantum calculations were useless against chaotic gravitational fields. Every elegant solution their advanced civilizations could devise was worthless against this simple, brutal problem. The human is correct, Elder Quintar announced suddenly, its crystalline form flickering with reluctant admiration. Direct physical intervention is the only viable solution. However, no known species could survive the acceleration and gravitational stresses required for such a mission. Blake's voice crackled through the comm as the training facility powered down. No known species except humans. He emerged from the facility moving with the careful precision of someone who had just spent the last hour operating under crushing gravity. While every other being on the station was showing signs of stress and panic, Blake looked focused and determined. You're insane if you think I'm letting you fly a suicide mission, Anne said as he approached. Blake checked the chronometer on his wrist. 38 minutes to impact. Not much time for debate. He looked at the alien delegates, many of whom were staring at him with expressions of awe and terror. Besides, I'm the only one here who can handle the G-forces this mission will require. The gravitational distortions around that asteroid will tear you apart. Solar Dancer Reth protested. Blake shrugged. Maybe, but I've been dealing with gravity my whole life. Time to find out if all that experience was worth something. As he headed toward the maintenance bay, Anne realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The most primitive species in the assembly was about to attempt a rescue mission that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations couldn't even survive. The heavy worlders were about to show the universe what they were really made of. Chief Murphy had seen a lot of impossible things in his 30 years maintaining deep space installations, but watching Captain Blake modify a maintenance pod for a suicide run against an exotic matter asteroid topped them all. The human worked with brutal efficiency, stripping non-essential systems and reinforcing structural supports while alien delegates watched in fascinated horror. You realize this thing wasn't designed for what you're planning, Murphy said, welding additional braces around the pilot compartment. Max safe acceleration is 3 Gs and that's pushing it. Blake secured himself into the pilot's seat and began running pre-flight diagnostics. How much thrust can the engines handle before they blow? Maybe 6 Gs for short bursts. Any more than that and you'll tear the pod apart. And the pilot compartment? Murphy's weathered face creased into a grim smile. Well, I built it to handle maintenance work around heavy equipment. Figure it should keep you in one piece up to about 8 Gs, assuming you don't mind a few broken ribs. Through the maintenance bay's viewing ports, the asteroid had grown large enough to blot out sections of starfield. Its exotic matter composition created visual distortions that made Anne's eyes water when she looked at it directly. The gravitational chaos it generated was wreaking havoc with the station's systems. Lights flickered randomly, gravity fields fluctuated, and the structural supports groaned under stress. 22 minutes to impact, the station's AI announced with the same mechanical comment used for routine maintenance schedules. Elder Quintar approached the pod, its crystalline form refracting the emergency lighting into prismatic patterns. Captain Blake, I must protest this course of action. The gravitational stresses you will encounter are beyond any recorded survival threshold. Your species may be adapted for heavy gravity, but this exceeds all reasonable parameters. Blake looked up from his instruments. Elder, with respect, you're calculating based on what other species can survive. Humans don't have elegant solutions like energy manipulation or dimensional phasing. We've always had to solve problems the hard way? By dying? Solar Dancer Reth interjected, its plasma form crackling with agitation. By refusing to give up, Blake corrected. He sealed his helmet and activated the pod's life support systems. Dr. Rodriguez, are my target coordinates programmed? Anne's voice came through the comm with barely controlled tension. Loaded and verified. You need to apply thrust at the 7 calculated impact points in sequence. Each burn needs to be exactly 12 seconds to achieve optimal trajectory change. Understood? Murphy, seal me up. The maintenance bay's massive doors began cycling open, revealing the star-filled void beyond. The asteroid dominated the view now, a mountain of impossible matter tumbling through space toward them. Reality bent around it like heat shimmer, and Anne could feel the gravitational distortions pulling at her inner ear even through the station's protective fields. Blake fired the pod's thrusters and launched into space with an acceleration that would have liquefied most of the alien observers. Through the pod's external cameras, they watched him navigate toward the asteroid's chaotic gravitational field. At first, his approach seemed steady and controlled. Then, he hit the first gravity well. The pod's acceleration readings spiked instantly from 3G to 7G as the asteroids distorted. Gravitational field grabbed the small vessel. Through the comm, they could hear Blake's labored breathing, but his voice remained steady as he adjusted thrust vectors to compensate. First waypoint reached, he reported. Beginning primary thrust sequence. Anne watched the telemetry displays with growing amazement. The gravitational forces around the asteroid should have torn the pod apart or knocked Blake unconscious, but he continued making precise adjustments to his approach vector. His movements were economical and purposeful, showing no sign of the panic that would have overwhelmed any other species under such conditions. How is he maintaining consciousness under those G-forces? Whispered a delegate from the Spiral Dancers. its ethereal form shimmering with disbelief. Dr. Rodriguez answered without taking her eyes off the displays. Dense bone structure, powerful cardiovascular system, and compressed muscle tissue. He's essentially a biological machine designed to function under crushing gravitational stress. The asteroid's exotic matter created a maze of gravitational anomalies that shifted unpredictably. What would have been a simple intercept course for conventional matter became a three-dimensional puzzle requiring constant adjustment, but Blake navigated it with an intuitive understanding of momentum and inertia that came from a lifetime of living with Earth's relentless pull. Second waypoint, Blake reported as the G-force readings climbed to 9G. Applying lateral thrust. Through the external cameras, they could see him firing the pod's thrusters in precise bursts, using the asteroid's own gravitational chaos as a navigation aid. Where other pilots would have fought against the distortions, Blake worked with them, letting the gravity wells slingshot him between thrust points with minimal fuel expenditure. Impossible, Elder Quintar breathed. He's using the gravitational anomalies as propulsion assistance. At the third waypoint, the pod's structural warnings began flashing red. The G-forces were approaching the limits of what even the reinforced maintenance vehicle could handle. But Blake's voice remained calm as he reported his position and began the next thrust sequence. Structural integrity at 70%, Murphy called out. Blake, you need to abort before that thing tears itself apart. Negative. Fourth waypoint in 30 seconds. Anne watched the biometric displays showing Blake's vital signs. Heart rate elevated but steady, blood pressure high but stable, oxygen saturation within acceptable parameters. His body was handling stresses that would have killed any other sapient species. But he was still functioning, still thinking, still flying with precision that defied belief. At the fifth waypoint, the G-forces peaked at 11G as Blake executed a complex maneuver around the asteroid's most chaotic gravitational anomaly. For several seconds, the comm went silent except for the sound of labored breathing. Then his voice came back, strained but determined. Sixth waypoint achieved. One more to go. The final thrust point required Blake to approach within 50 meters of the asteroid's surface, close enough that the exotic matter's reality distortions made the pod's instruments nearly useless. He was navigating by instinct now, using his human understanding of physics and momentum to guide him through gravitational chaos that would have confounded the galaxy's most sophisticated computers. Final thrust sequence initiated, Blake reported. 12 seconds and counting. Anne held her breath as she watched the pod maintain position relative to the massive asteroid, its thrusters firing in perfect synchronization despite gravitational forces that defied rational calculation. Blake wasn't fighting the chaos, he was reading it, understanding it, using it. Thrust complete, Blake announced as the pod pulled away from the asteroid. Trajectory change achieved. Impact course altered by, let me check, 4.7 degrees. Anne ran the calculations quickly, then looked up at the assembled alien delegates with a smile that mixed exhaustion and triumph. It worked. The asteroid will miss us by 3,000 kilometers. As Blake began his return journey to the station, navigating back through the gravitational maze with the same intuitive skill he'd shown on approach, Elder Quintar spoke in a voice filled with something approaching reverence. We have gravely underestimated the heavy worlders. What we dismissed as primitive adaptation is actually sophisticated specialization. Captain Blake has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our most advanced technologies. Through the viewing ports, they watched the asteroid tumble past Harmony Station, its exotic matter distortions creating a light show that would have been beautiful under other circumstances. Crisis averted by a human in a maintenance pod, using nothing more sophisticated than Newton's laws and an evolutionary adaptation to Earth's crushing gravity. Blake's voice crackled through the comm one final time as he approached the station's docking bay. Control, this is Pod 7 requesting permission to dock. And somebody better have coffee waiting. I've had a really long day. Despite everything they'd just witnessed, Anne couldn't help but laugh. Even after saving the entire station through impossible feats of piloting and endurance, Blake was still fundamentally human. The heavy worlders had finally stood tall and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The celebration in Harmony Station's main assembly hall was unlike anything in galactic history. Beings who had never before acknowledged human existence were now approaching the small Earth delegation, with expressions of genuine respect and curiosity. The maintenance pod sat in the center of the hall like a monument to human ingenuity, its hull scarred from gravitational stresses that should have destroyed it completely. Blake emerged from the medical bay with clean bills of health from 3 different alien physicians, each marveling at his species' ability to function under conditions that would liquefy their own physiology. His only complaint was a slight headache from the gravitational distortions, which he treated with 2 aspirin from his personal kit. Remarkable, Dr. Vailnash of the Crystal Mine said, examining the simple pain relievers with fascination. Your medical technology is as robust as your engineering. Simple molecular compounds designed for biological systems that must function under constant gravitational stress. High Chancellor Vixen approached the human delegation, its electromagnetic form subdued and respectful. When it spoke, its voice carried none of the casual dismissal from earlier in the day. Dr. Rodriguez, Captain Blake, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I must offer our profound apologies for our earlier misconceptions about human capabilities. We allowed our own evolutionary advantages to blind us to the strengths that different environments can produce. Anne accepted the apology with grace, though she couldn't resist a small smile. Evolution doesn't create superior or inferior species, Chancellor. It creates specialists. You adapted to manipulate energy and space-time with elegant precision. We adapted to function under crushing gravitational forces with robust reliability. Both approaches have their place. Elder Quintar's crystalline form approached, its multifaceted surface reflecting the assembly hall's lights in patterns that seemed almost humble. Dr. Rodriguez speaks wisdom. We have spent eons perfecting solutions that work within comfortable parameters. When faced with chaos that exceeded our design specifications, our elegant systems failed. The humans succeeded because they evolved to expect chaos, to work within it rather than around it. Solar Dancer. Reth flowed closer, its plasma form crackling with what Anne was learning to recognize as excitement. Your gravitational engineering concepts fascinate us. We would be honored to learn from your approaches to structural design and force manipulation. The request sent a ripple of interest through the assembled delegates. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence a few hours ago were now eager to study human techniques. The dismissive laughter had been replaced by genuine scientific curiosity. Of course, Anne replied, though I should warn you, human engineering tends to be rather direct compared to galactic standards. We build things to survive worst-case scenarios rather than optimizing for ideal conditions. Which is exactly why we need to understand it, Elder Quintar admitted. Today's crisis revealed a fundamental weakness in galactic civilization. Our technologies are marvels of efficiency within their operational parameters, but they fail catastrophically when those parameters are exceeded. Human approaches appear to maintain functionality across much wider ranges of conditions. Captain Blake, still showing no signs of exhaustion from his impossible mission, stepped forward. It's not that our way is better, Elder. It's that different environments require different solutions. You evolved in gentle conditions that rewarded elegance and efficiency. We evolved under constant pressure that rewarded durability and adaptability. A new voice joined the conversation. Ambassador Volseth of the Trade Consortium, a political entity that had previously excluded humanity from most galactic commerce. Captain Blake raises an important point about environmental challenges. The galaxy contains many hazardous regions that our current technologies cannot access. Systems with extreme gravitational conditions, high radiation environments, chaotic space-time distortions. Perhaps human robustness could open new frontiers for exploration and development. Anne felt a thrill of possibility. Humanity had always been seen as the backward species, arriving late to galactic civilization and struggling to catch up. But what if their supposed disadvantages were actually unique qualifications for challenges the galaxy couldn't handle? We would be interested in collaborative ventures, she said carefully. Human engineering combined with galactic energy manipulation could create hybrid technologies more capable than either approach alone. The idea sparked immediate interest. Within minutes, representatives from a dozen species were proposing joint research projects, infrastructure developments in hostile environments, and exploration missions to regions considered too dangerous for conventional galactic technology. High Chancellor Vixen raised one of its flowing appendages for attention. The Assembly recognizes that a formal proposal is in order. Dr. Rodriguez, Captain Blake, Would humanity be willing to accept full membership in the Galactic Science Council? Not as junior partners learning from advanced civilizations, but as specialists in gravitational engineering and robust system design? Anne looked at Blake, seeing her own amazement reflected in his eyes. Full membership in the Science Council was an honor reserved for species that had contributed fundamental advances to galactic knowledge. Humanity was being offered a place among the galaxy's most respected civilizations. "We accept," Anne said, her voice carrying across the silent assembly hall. "But we propose expanding the Council's mission beyond pure science." Today proved that the galaxy needs more than elegant solutions. Sometimes you need approaches that can survive chaos, function under extreme conditions, and solve problems through determination rather than sophistication. Elder Quintar's crystalline form pulsed with approval. "Agreed. The new council will study robust engineering alongside energy manipulation, brute force solutions alongside elegant mathematics, survival technologies alongside efficiency optimization. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, and we need approaches as diverse as the challenges we face." As the formal ceremonies began, Anne found herself thinking about humanity's long journey from their gravity-bound homeworld to this moment of galactic recognition. They hadn't overcome their evolutionary heritage. They had embraced it, used it, turned their limitations into strengths. The maintenance pod in the center of the hall caught her eye, its battered hull bearing witness to forces that should have destroyed it. Like humanity itself, it had survived not through elegant design or sophisticated technology, but through stubborn determination and robust construction. It had done what needed to be done, regardless of how crude or primitive it might appear to more advanced civilizations. Blake appeared beside her, following her gaze to the pod. "Think they'll put it in a museum?" "Probably," Anne replied. "The first human artifact to save a galactic installation. Not bad for primitive technology." "We're not primitive," Blake corrected with a grin. "We're specialized. And apparently the galaxy needs specialists who know how to stand tall when the universe tries to crush them." Through the assembly hall's great windows, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the political changes happening within the station. But for humanity, everything had changed. They were no longer the backward species struggling to catch up with galactic civilization. They were the heavy worlders who had learned to dance with gravity itself, and the galaxy was finally ready to learn their steps. The aliens had laughed at gravity, dismissing it as a primitive force to be overcome through elegant technology. But humans had never fought gravity. They had partnered with it, learned from it, and ultimately used it to save the very beings who had dismissed them as evolutionary failures. In the end, it wasn't about who could manipulate space-time or process quantum calculations. It was about who could stand tall when the universe tested their resolve. And on that measure, humanity had finally found their place among the stars,